I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I was like numb inside and not happy inside, you know? And so that's when I really started to seek. But I recognized quickly that, like, okay, this therapist could help me, but like, she wasn't going to change me, you know? Like, I had to be the one to be like, I need to decide to overcome that, and I need to decide to challenge that. If I wanted my friends to really win and I really wanted them to be truly happy, I have got to do that. If I want my environment to be so happy and I want them to win, then I have got to be so happy and I have got to win.
From SGI USA, I'm Cassidy Bradford, and this is Buddhability, the weekly series where I talk with Buddhists from all walks of life about the power we each have to change our lives and the world around us. Welcome, Zoe, to Buddhability! Yay! Thank you for joining me so early in the morning. It's 6 a.m. for you, right?
Correct.
Wow, thank you so much fitting this in before a full work day. Thank you so much. You're so like joyful and bright, and you have a really really incredible story just about like treasuring your life, which I feel like so many of us struggle with. So thank you so much for opening up today. So we'll start out just with an introduction, so you can tell me just a little bit about like who you are and just how you spend your time.
First of all, thank you, Cassidy, for having me on the podcast. Oh, I'm honored to be here. Let's go. Yeah. My name is Zoe, and I'm 24 years old. And I was born and raised in Aurora, Colorado, and now I live in Phoenix, Arizona. And yeah, I love to read. I like to learn. I work at a local smoke shop during the day, so that's always cool. And then, I build a business for myself on the side. And then I really like to just learn a lot and talk to people.
So I know you grew up around Buddhism, so maybe you can tell me just like a little bit about like your life growing up, and then what your like early exposure was to SGI Buddhism.
Yes. So I grew up, like you said, in a Buddhist household. So my early exposure was very young, actually. My parents practiced Buddhism, and then I remember always wanting to go to like the local Buddhist community district meetings. And so that was kind of my first exposure to the Buddhist community, was these local district discussion meetings. And I remember my parents used to open up their home and we would have them at our house sometimes. And then every month I always looked forward to them, you know, even if they weren't at my house. Even if we were struggling going into the meeting, I always came out so much happier. So I always wanted to go, and even if I didn't know what was going on at these meetings, I always felt so much joy after the meeting. So I remember always just chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo in my head all of the time, no matter like what I was suffering through, or even friends that were suffering too, you know, at a young age. I was always chanting for them. So yeah.
Wow. I was not really chanting when I was younger. But I definitely like, I also enjoyed going to Buddhist meetings because like, to your point, I always felt better afterward. And also like just being around people that were really like warm and bright always like felt really good. But for me, it wasn't until like, maybe like middle or high school that I started kind of chanting a little bit and experimenting. And then in college was when it was like, oh, okay, like I'm really gonna do this. For you, like, was there one key point where you were like, whoa, I'm like really practicing Buddhism now? Or because you were kind of always chanting as a kid, like it was just a natural progression over time?
Yeah. I would say there was a point where I was never consistent too, like growing up as a kid. And then when I went to college on my own, I think that's when I really developed my own practice because I was really suffering. And then I knew that the Buddhist community always like took me in. And so, I feel like in college was when I really developed my own practice. Yeah, I would say that too. Likewise.
I think that's very, common kind of occurrence for a lot of us that are aware of Buddhism, even if we're not practicing at a younger age, that's kind of the time that like, oh, well, I know that this tool exists, so let me like try it. So of course, speaking to struggling and suffering, today we're really talking a lot about our self-worth and learning how to value our lives. So I know that you started struggling with your self-image at like a pretty young age. So as much as you're comfortable sharing, can you tell me about, that early struggle?
Yeah. So reflecting, I feel I really struggled at a really young age. Like I suffered with severe acne like at a really young age. And so I think this had put like this self-image in my brain of always comparing myself to others because acne is like on your face, and it's kind of the first thing people look at. It's always in the back of your head, you can't get rid of that. And then I think that led to other things. I also had dyslexia at a really young age too. So I remember being just embarrassed about like how little I could read or like how slow of a reader I was. And that was like in elementary school. So then it progressed. And then, yeah, in high school, I really started to recognize, now looking back at it, when I was like in the midst of it, I didn't think much of it. But yeah, looking back, I started to really develop this self-image issue and, yeah, comparing myself with others at like 14. I remember actually there was a time where a friend had brought like, a carton of Oreos or whatever to school, and I'm 14 as a freshman, and she had offered me one, and I was like, no, like I'm on a diet, and like she was so perplexed, and I just was like thought it was normal, like in this funk of like, growing up and comparing yourself, and I started a diet really young, and I didn't even really realize that it was uncommon until people were like, oh, that's interesting that you're doing that. And I'm like, oh, and I still didn't even think much of it, but like reflecting on it, I'm like, okay, well, that was probably really when things started to escalate with my like self-image and comparing myself bodily wise. And yeah.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, I think there's something about like I don't know, like pressure maybe of school, and like you're seeing everybody every day and you're comparing, like, to your point with dyslexia, like comparing your academic ability, you're comparing the way you look. Like, I think many people struggle with it in a variety of ways, but so painful when you're young and don't even maybe realize that that's what's going on. Like, it all just feels normal. Like, oh, this is how, I should be thinking. This is how everybody operates. Like, this is just how the world is.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of the early period. And then I know you continued struggling with self-image. Maybe you can like talk about when you left for college and that period of your life.
Yeah, so my freshman year of college was lockdown.
Wonderful. That's perfect for our mental health. Great.
Yeah. Oh.
Wow.
Anyways, but I am grateful for that, but it was definitely so tough. Like, so I was experiencing these self-image issues, and then when I went to college and I moved to a state that I didn't know anybody, you're just like left with your thoughts all of the time. And so I really started to recognize the tremendous amount of suffering with like disordered eating. I was left with my thoughts all of the time, and so I really started to like calorie count and how much exercise I was doing and what did I look like and all of these things when you're just like by yourself in your thought world, And so that's when things really started. That's when I started practicing too, because I really started to suffer tremendously, And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I was like numb inside and not happy inside, And so that's when I really started to seek.
What was that moment like when you thought, oh, wait a second, like I'm feel so numb and empty, like I'm gonna try chanting or I'm gonna go to a meeting. What was that moment or experience like?
Mm. It was an accumulation of moments, I feel,
Hmm.
but there was a specific time where I remember being so exhausted, like with just my thoughts, you know?
Yeah.
And I was so drained, like sun up to sundown. I was thinking about like so many negative things, you know? And then I remember in my car, like just sitting in my car crying because like I didn't know what to do. But I knew that, you know, like you had mentioned before, you have this tool. And so I knew that like going to these Buddhist meetings as a kid, that like that really elevated my life state. I got connected to the community in Phoenix, or I lived in Tempe at the time. And so they there was Buddhist friends who were actually reaching out to me, and I just went to any meeting I was invited to, because and I didn't even have a car, but if they were able to pick me up, I didn't care what the meeting was, you know. But I knew that I was just so sad and so gross inside, you know. So I was like, any meeting that I can attend, I will go.
And like when you were really starting to go to meetings and activities, how did you feel? Like, were you experiencing any hope or any kind of shifts?
mm, I think me just the want to go and the effort to go made a shift already, kind of. You know, I remember going to the Buddhist center and being so sad, and nobody really knew that I was so suffering, you know, but you know, so there was a meeting happening, and I actually left to go to a different room to chant by myself. And I remember just bawling my eyeballs out because not knowing what to do, but just knowing that, like, okay, Nam-myoho-renge-kyo works. So I'm just going to sit here and chant and cry and not know what's going on. But still, something in my life is shifting. And so I left, like, feeling a little bit better, you know, still not like all the way healed or anything, but knowing that, like, I was doing something that was helping my life, you know? So that kind of helped slowly but surely, you know?
It just, I mean, thank you for sharing that, first of all, because I know that can be kind of painful or difficult to be like, yeah, I was like sobbing and felt so, you know, miserable. But yeah, it's so really a beautiful kind of awareness or perspective that even though like you don't know what to do or like how to sort things out, just knowing that the act of chanting is like doing something good for your life and having confidence in that. I remember having moments like that too when I was like in the kind of the deepest part of my own mental health struggles, this feeling of like, okay, I can't even envision the other side of this, but I know that like my life is moving forward. Even if I can't like see it yet, I can feel like, okay, I'm fighting for my happiness. So anyway, I imagine that that's kind of like, yeah, for a period of time, maybe what your life is looking like. Okay, like I'm gonna go to meetings, I don't know what's going on. Maybe sometimes I'm feeling really discouraged, but I'm keeping like, yeah, stepping forward. Was there a moment when you felt like a early breakthrough?
Yeah, I would say I had mentioned, so I got diagnosed with an eating disorder during this time too. So then when I was really starting to practice too, I seen that shift more too, because like I said before, my thoughts were so like what I was eating in the day and how many calories was I eating and what was I exercising, and then all of these thoughts were so draining. And I seen when I started to like really move my life forward, you know, attempting to, um, it didn't go away, but I feel like my life raised higher than it. So I could look at it from like, okay, that's what's actually going on. Like that doesn't make me who I am. That's just something I'm experiencing. And so I think that was the first shift where I was like, okay, I can do that. I'm under control, you know, like that's not who I am, you know?
Oh, 100%. The state of your life is just so like wrapped up in everything. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
chant, you're like elevating your life state. And yeah, to your point, it doesn't disappear, but you're like, oh, okay, but I can see it. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
perspective now. I have
Mm-hmm.
wisdom to be able to like really put it in its proper place. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
wow. What a big like uh weight to lift off. Around this time when you were like, you know, officially diagnosed, were you also doing therapy? Were there other kind of things that you were doing at the time to address it?
Yeah. So I didn't seek therapy right at first because I didn't know that that's what I was experiencing, actually. I remember just all those thoughts, having all these things and all these things, not knowing what's going on. And then I was like, okay, I don't think I should be thinking all these thoughts all the time. I don't know what's going on. And it wasn't until I had a friend actually open up about her disordered eating that I was like, okay, I mean, maybe I'm experiencing something similar, you know? And so I took an online assessment and I still didn't even, like, obviously those are not 100% correct, but I did take one and then it said that I was highly likely to have an eating disorder. And then even then I was like still in denial. I was like, no way, like, because you know, there's I wasn't like starving and I wasn't throwing up or anything, you know? So it wasn't like the two common eating disorders I didn't have, and I didn't really think I had one, you know? And so, yeah, then I took that test and then I was like, okay, well, I don't know how to tackle this on my own, so let me try to get some help. And so I even tried to get help, and then the first help I got was no help. And so I remember leaving that session crying too, because I was like, wow, I didn't, anyways. So then I stuck again and I was like, okay, let me find somebody who specializes in eating disorder, maybe. Yeah, so I sought therapy and then I went long enough to realize that, like, okay, she confirmed that that's what that was, and she confirmed that other things I had too, you know? But I recognized quickly that, like, okay, this therapist could help me, but like, she wasn't going to change me, you know? Like, I had to be the one to be like, okay, I need to decide to overcome that and I need to decide to challenge that, you know. She can confirm that's what it is, but like she can't walk in my shoes, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I really started to
Mm-hmm.
chant to really overcome that myself, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that a lot from folks that I interview that, yeah, therapy is incredible and powerful, and somebody else can't like change you for you. You know, it has to come
Hmm.
from your own life and your own
Yeah.
heart to really like transform something deep, like a deep tendency in our lives. At that point, like kind of having that confirmed for you and then recognizing like, okay, this is something that I just really need to like transform deeply. How did you how did you even start? That's kind of like a big task. Where do you even start?
Mm. Good question. I feel like I knew I couldn't do it on my own. Like if I was left with all of these thoughts by myself, I needed to get around a community that valued me and loved me. And I think that's why, too, I always wanted to go to any Buddhist meeting I could because these people loved me and they respected me, you know? And I also started to study from our mentor, Daisaku Ikeda, too, because he just pours belief into us all the time, you know, emphasizing that like we have a mission and we are valuable. And so I really started to like drown out all of these not good thoughts that I was having with, you know, people who really actually loved me, or, you know, studying from Ikeda, just making his words my own, you know, and then chanting like that too. Like, okay, I can. And then I took on any opportunity I could to really, you know, share my heart. And I remember sharing too, the first people I shared my eating disorder with, like verbally out loud, was with my local district meeting, like and it was on Zoom because it was during, you know, COVID too. So I remember like even that was so freeing. And I remember crying too, and like everybody didn't even know what an eating disorder was, like on the Zoom, and I didn't care though, you know, like I was still changing my life, you know, shifting my life, and just okay, I can do it, you know, and every day challenging that, like okay, I can do this, you know, deciding every day.
Oh yeah, deciding every day. That is really the key. Every moment, every morning. Was there anything that you were reading at the time that like really helped you kind of like ground yourself in like this determination that you're gonna like value your life?
Yeah, I have a few things actually, but I'll start with the discussions on youth. And I remember reading this too, because at the time too, I felt kind of lost, you know, not having any direction. I'm like, what do I do, you know? And he said that those who remember they have a unique mission are strong. Whatever problems they have, they will not be defeated. They can transform all their problems into catalysts for growth towards a hope-fulfilled future. Yeah. And I remember reading it at the time and being like, I might not believe this actually at all, you know? But like, Daisaku created us and he believes in me, you know? And so and that's why I kind of started studying more too, because all of the things, he gave me hope, you know? He gave me like a sense of mission that like, okay, I can do this. And like, I have a mission. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm still going to figure it out and find it, you know? And my struggles, you know, I'm here now sharing on the podcast too, you know? So like, all of the things you're going through are gonna help other people too eventually, you know?
It's so interesting. When I was younger and like just really, man, suffering a lot, I had a lot of Buddhist friends that were always saying like, this is gonna be like such a wonderful treasure of your life.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I don't really know what you're talking about, but
I feel
now
that.
you're like, what? I don't feel that at all. But now I really do sincerely feel that way. Like, wow, all of like the hardest moments in my life are also like, rather than being things that I look back on with like regret or shame or whatever, sadness, they're all things that are like, wow, man, I'm like so capable. They're the thing that like helps us build such a solid foundation for our life, because we're like, oh wow, yeah, okay, listen, if I can overcome that, I'm good, you know, I can do anything.
Exactly, yeah. I think I can really do anything, you know? Okay, I also want to mention one more thing though. Yeah, that really helped me. It says, it is precisely because we have suffering that we can earnestly chant to the Gohonzon. The determination to seriously confront our suffering causes the fundamental power inherent in our lives to emerge that more strongly. Yeah. So that's kind of what you were saying too, you know, like these struggles really make us strong, you know.
What you shared just makes me think about like what you shared about when you were at the community center and like you went to go chant and feeling like, okay, but at least I'm making this cause. Like the determination, that like quote you shared, to be able to like chant is in and of itself like a cause to like bring out, you know, everything that we need to be able to transform. So you mentioned like the value of having community and people that like really poured into you when you were struggling to like be able to treasure your own life. So can you tell me like, how did that impact you or like encourage you to be able to like transform?
So after college, then I really kind of elevated my life state about this eating disorder. And then it went deeper than that too, like really valuing myself, because I started to see like all of these relationships in my life were so not good for my soul, you know, like I really felt not valued in a lot of the relationships I got myself into, whether that be like romantically or friendship wise or anything, you know, like I felt disrespected in a lot of my relationships. And there's this Buddhist concept of the oneness of self and the environment, you know? And so when I started to really experience all of these crazy relationships in my environment, I recognized that, okay, like if these people don't respect me, then like whatever's it's going on inside of me. Like if that's what's happening in my environment, then inside I am not respecting my own life, because that's what the environment is showing me. And so then that kind of started something too, because I was like, okay, well, I don't know how to fix that either. I started to recognize it, but I was like, I don't know how to change that, like what the heck, how do I start that, And so I started to chant to really, value my life then too, because I was like wanting different relationships in my life. I wanted friends and people in my life who really respected me. And when I started to chant like that, then like all of these people kind of like left my life. I didn't really have to do much. I just like, it kind of just happened naturally. And then because of that, then I really started to gain amazing relationships with, a plethora of people that really valued my life. And then I had to learn trust too, because, I had these awful relationships that I was in. And so I had all of these walls and like covering myself, like not allowing anybody into my life. And then when I started to shift and then gain all of these amazing relationships, it took me a while to even be like, these people really want the best for me, and I should trust them, and I should listen to what they have to say because they do really care for my life, So that took some time too.
Wow. It's amazing that it's like sort of I don't know, like the layers sort of.
Yeah.
Like, okay, first is like, okay, I'm recognizing like the ways that my self-worth is impacting my mental health and my self-image, and okay, transform that. Oh wow, wait, it goes deeper. I'm realizing like it's also in my relationships. Okay, I'm gonna transform that. It's definitely like a always ongoing process, but really incredible to then not only like transform your self-image or self-worth, but be able to then like have wonderful people in your life and be able to open your heart to them and be able to really trust them and have like not just they're great people, but the relationship is really like one that nurtures your life. Yeah, it's just so wonderful. And then I also understand you're having like recently an even bigger kind of shift in terms of your career as well. So do you want to tell me, like, I know you mentioned your work, but yeah, tell me a little bit about that journey and where you're at.
Yes. After college, I went on this road trip and I was like living in this camper, and I traveled with my best friend at the time, the West Coast, and then we were like living outside. So that's when I also really started to chant too, because that's when I got consistently chanting, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna chant for our protection. And that's when I started reading that Discussions on Youth book. And then so I was always in my mind like, okay, what's Daisaku Ikeda saying, And then he talked about really like finding a mentor and finding a teacher in life, And so I graduated college and I was like, okay, what do I want? I didn't feel at the time I had anybody really mentoring me in life. I had Daisaku Ikeda, my spiritual mentor, but I wanted somebody in my life to really pour into me. And I started to chant to really have great people come into my life, like I had mentioned. And after I came home from my road trip too, I was living with just random roommates. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to start a job, like I had jobs throughout college, but I really wanted to like have a set income. So then that's when I started working at the local smoke shop. And then I was at the time interning for a forensic psychologist. And then I even then was like, okay, that's not really the type of lifestyle I want, because I seen the doctor who was working in forensic psychology. And I was like, wow, she really, I don't want to be mentored by somebody like that, She was really working a lot. And then I came home one day and shared with my roommates that I had just met. Like somebody had asked me if the smoke shop was mine, like if I owned that business. And I was like, no, but like maybe one day I could, like maybe one day I would do something like that. And then at the time, then the roommates had told me that they knew some people who were like really successful in what they were doing, and I didn't know anybody successful at the time. And so they asked me so kindly if they would like to meet them. And so I was like, yeah, I would love to, like, thank you. And at the time, too, I was really seeking mentorship. I was seeking somebody, and so that's when I met them. And that's when my journey kind of started, too, because then I met people who were living the type of lifestyle I did want to live, and who were making, value-based decisions and doing things good for the world. And then through that, they helped me, the type of lifestyle they created for themselves required business ownership. And so then I had to go into business for myself and learn how to become a business owner in that way, and that's been a journey too, back to what you were mentioning earlier, how I recently had a major shift too, was because I launched my business 2 years ago, but then it wasn't until recently when I started to really understand that, like, okay, I was still not really valuing my life or like understanding the power of my life, and that like I hold the power within me, until recently. And all of these people gratefully, are pouring into me and telling me that how amazing I am and all of these things, But I realized that, like, okay, if I really want to do this thing, if I really want to build something great for myself, I have to believe in myself, like I have to stop suffering, and like I have to get rid of this victim mentality of like why it's not happening for me, or like why I'm not building the type of business I want, or like how big is it right now, I have to value my life first, and I have to really truly believe that, like, okay, I can do it. And like every day, like before too, talking about deciding, like every moment of every day deciding that, like, okay, I can do it, it's gonna happen for me, and that's it, and that's all, So that's been a major shift recently.
Wow. Listening, like, yeah, no, absolutely. Because I was thinking, like, now, like, this sort of third piece of your, like, evolution and your self-worth is, like, going from, like, not wanting to, like, emotionally or mentally harm yourself, being able to open yourself up to others, and then let your environment, like, reflect, this treasuring your life. But the third is like almost like going beyond just like treasuring your life, but really seeing the power. Not only is your life valuable, but it's powerful and you're strong. And like now to really believe in that part is the next kind of like step. Now that you're like, okay, all right, where I'm at now is like time to believe in the power. Okay, now I have to be really courageous. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of this and for being so open and authentic. And especially if you were somebody that struggled with comparison or like how people view you, to be able to share so openly on like a, public platform like that is really courageous. So I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
To kind of like, wind things down or close things out. I'm wondering, for anybody listening that maybe is like in the midst of some struggle similar to yours at any point in your journey so far, what advice would you give them to be able to like overcome this like self-doubt and self-criticism?
First, I would say I have a few points to this question, actually.
Yes, please share them all.
First, to really decide too, like I was saying, that like, okay, you might not believe it right now, but like you have a purpose here on earth, like there's no rhyme reason why you're here, like there's something deep there. Deciding to believe that, because what's the alternative? You might as well try to decide to believe that, and so recognizing that, first of all, and every day reminding yourself, like, okay, like every moment of every day, like, okay, I have a purpose here, and then also community too, like I had mentioned before, like find your people and let them speak into you, and let go of people who don't serve you and who might not value you, and start to value yourself, and then you'll find people, and then like really be so grateful for those people, because they help raise you and mold you into the person you are, and they'll help you learn the value of yourself. And then another point to that too is I think another major transition that happened in my life was when I started to become like so serious about, I really wanted to be a good friend. Like I wanted to learn that, and I knew that like people needed friends. And so I started to chant too, to like really become a great friend to people. And through that, I learned compassion, and I learned I needed to be compassionate. And then through that, I learned that like a lot of people are suffering, like because I was chanting for all these things, a lot of my friends were opening up to me about things that like were so deep, and I was like, wow, like there's a lot of people in this world, and this is just like my personal circle, and so if all of these people are truly suffering, and then I didn't know really how to help them, but like listening and then also really chanting so seriously for them to be so happy, I just really want my friends to win in their life. And then through that, I feel like I also learned how to value my life, because I I've seen the value I bring to people, like just me in my life and listening to my friends, this brought value. And I was like, wow, like the power I play in these people's lives, is so, I need to value my life. And then also, if I wanted my friends to really win and I really wanted them to be truly happy, I have got to do that. Like back to oneness of self and the environment. If I want my environment to be so happy and I want them to win, then I have got to be so happy and I have got to win. And so I have to learn how to do that. I don't know what that looks like, but really deciding every day that like I'm gonna figure that out, because I want world peace at the end of the day, so I need to find peace within myself if I want the world to know peace, Okay, and then I'm gonna end with this too. This really helped me. Okay. It says, we are Myoho-renge-kyo. We are Buddhas. Therefore, Nichiren warns, even though you chant and believe in Myoho-renge-kyo, if you think the law is outside of yourself, you are embracing not the mystic law, but an inferior teaching. What does it mean to think the law is outside yourself? One sign would be if we blame others or our circumstances for our unhappiness. Even if we chant, if we do not believe that the power of the mystic law is within us, we cannot fundamentally solve our problems. As Nichiren writes elsewhere in this letter, you must summon up deep faith that Myoho-renge-kyo is your life itself. Chanting with this conviction allows us to reveal our unlimited potential and move everything in the direction of happiness. Our unlimited potential, right? And then President Daisaku Ikeda, he says, nothing is stronger than the steady yet solid steps we take in your youth. No matter how modest they may seem, you don't need to be overly ambitious or in a great hurry. Also, nothing can be more misguided than comparing yourself unfavorably with others and then losing your confidence and devaluing yourself. When you in fact possess the Buddha nature, which is worthy of infinite respect, every individual embodies this Buddha nature. So every individual, even ourselves, are worthy of this infinite respect, And then he says, chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo vibrantly in the place where you are now and shine as an entity of the mystic law, just as you are. Press ahead freely and confidently, unafraid of failure. So this really helped too. That would be super nice. Yeah.